Welcome to the Leverage Your Influence podcast, where we talk to creatives and entrepreneurs about how they leverage their influence, impact, and income through podcasting. If you own or operate a business, then today this episode is for you because we are talking to the author of Podcasting for Business, the myth, the legend herself, Megan. And we're excited to have her today. Megan, welcome to Leverage Your Influence podcast.
Oh, thank you, GP. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yes, and you are joining us from sunny Canada. And
Sunny today, happily.
yes, happy to see the sun shining on your side because it's surely sunny in Virginia. But can you tell us your story, how you got into podcasting? Because you've been doing it for a long time.
I have. I've been producing podcasts since 2017. And it all started, well, it was a little bit out of the blue. I had never set out to become a podcast producer. I had no particular interest in podcast other than as a listener. But an old colleague of mine who had a background in multimedia, we'd worked together at a marketing education company. She called me up one day and she says, "Hey, do you want to start a business together?" And I said, "With you, I'd love to." And we put our skill sets together. She was, big into podcasting, great into video, audio engineer, and mine was in digital marketing and helping online businesses grow. So we're like, okay, we can do podcasts for businesses, and we have been doing it ever since.
Amazing, amazing. And that organization is called One Stone Creative.
Exactly, One Stone Creative, and we do all kinds of production, all with the purpose of helping a podcast really work within a business rather than as a standalone project.
Right. So I'm aware of some hospitals who perhaps their marketing budget is 2 million a year or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have a podcast. From your perspective, what makes podcasting such a powerful tool for business growth in today's market?
I think what makes it so powerful is that it's a tool that can be completely customized for your business. It's not like something that you take out of the box and it works a certain way to do a specific thing. A podcast is something that you can design to do a whole bunch of different things depending on what your business needs. So use the example of a hospital. Maybe most hospitals probably don't need to be a top 10% show. That's not really going to help them, but maybe what they do need is a great company culture. And so they use a podcast to help team members in different departments get to know each other, and really help kind of encourage conversations between people who might otherwise meet at the hospital. And that could be a really good way for them to get benefit and real business value out of a podcast that isn't maybe the typical, I've got a podcast, I'm going to be number one, I'm going to have hundreds of thousands of followers. It really can be customized to whatever a business happens to need.
Right. And I think about perhaps a divorce attorney with a practice. How could they leverage a podcast to get more leads or clients?
I laugh because I love divorce attorneys. They make great podcasters. we work with a couple of them. In that particular industry, that's a difficult industry to be in and to market in, right? Because you need people need you at a very specific time in their
Right.
business. No one is happily married and thinking, boy, I better look up divorce attorneys just in case, right? Like when you need one right away, and you're going to go to the internet, you're going to search. And when you have an ongoing and actively updated demonstration of your insight and your ability and the people that you've worked with that you can get through a podcast, that's going to really show somebody, oh, this person helps someone who's in my situation, I better call them. Or this person has done 10,000 of these and they've got all of these case studies, talking to past clients, talking to other experts. Okay, this is the expert I need. And so it's a really kind of broad net to catch people at that very specific time in their lives. And that can be really, really valuable for that. Especially divorce is very high trust. People need to really think that this is a person who's going to be able to help me, who's going to take care of me, treat me well. And the knowing, liking, and trusting that, as you get from a podcast, that can really enhance that decision at scale.
Right.
You don't have to talk to every person 8 times. They can listen to 8 podcast episodes and get that same amount of relationship development.
Right. Podcasting gives you so many opportunities to build touch point opportunities and opportunities for them to
Precisely.
know, like, and trust you, which makes it easier to convert and build your clientele.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if a business is thinking about launching a podcast, what should their number one priority be? Should it be being an audio and video podcast, or just doing whatever they can commit to doing and being consistent with it?
I think that's a really good question because as you know, you have a video podcast and a live video podcast, no less, and that I think works very well for your business, what you're trying to do, and the people that you're talking to. For some businesses, that the same equation might have a different result, because as you know, video can be a little more. There can be more friction in getting the light set up, in getting guests comfortable with being on video, and the extra investment in post production that can sometimes come along with it. So I think when a company is deciding, hey, I want to get into podcasting, I want to start making multimedia in this way, they need to think out what's the podcast for in the business. Now, is it to network and connect with clients? Okay, and then if that's your goal, and what am I, everything that's going to make it easier and more pleasant for potential guests to maybe become clients, I'm going to focus on them and their experience. It might be to create content that you can repurpose. In that case, you're going to want it in as many multimedia standpoints as you want. So it always comes down to what's the primary reason the podcast exists in your business? What's the most important thing it does? And what are the things that facilitate that happening? And I think it's going to come out differently for different businesses. And the argument can be made, you know, at this point, everyone should be on video as much as possible. I may be one of the last podcast producers that doesn't think so. I think if it adds too much friction to the process, or if it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze, as one of my clients says, then you just stick with the audio and make great audio.
Yeah, yeah. I say all the time, video builds engagement, but audio builds intimacy. And
Ooh, I love that.
I truly believe that when people are listening to your show and not just watching, they are locked in more deeply. Why do I say that? Think about it. I'm commuting to work. My commute may be 30 minutes, but you're journeying with me. You're in my ears. If I'm on my phone watching you on video, I may get an ESPN notification. I may get a CNN notification. I may get a new TikTok or Instagram notification. And I have other things that can pry me away. But when I click on that audio episode, there's not much that can take that episode. If my phone rings, it'll pause, but there are fewer distractions. And also, podcasting, think about radio. It used to be called theater of the mind, right? And so just the opportunity to journey with someone wherever they are, cutting the grass, cooking, running their errands. You are literally a part of their life, and the distractions are minimal. So I prefer audio podcasts, but I'm a proponent of both because I believe in leveraging video to help repurpose and market your show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There are some shows that I listen to only in audio because that's, you know, where, and it's exactly as you say, it's where that, not just that podcast, but that host fits into my life.
Yeah.
Like I've got my cooking podcasts and we make dinner together, but then I've also got the ones that I like to watch. There's one I love. It's, I don't know if you've ever seen Financial Audit with Caleb Hammer.
Yes.
But it's a video podcast and I'm just addicted to it. I love watching it and I put it on video and it's kind of like my end of the workday. Okay, I'm doing my last little, not high brain work, just going to tick in the box, getting my bookkeeping done and whatnot. And it's like, that's on in the background and I enjoy watching them so much. But it really, people do make patterns around their podcast. And when you understand your audience and how they're using podcasts, and you can even provide guidance on how people can use your podcast as a business owner and, you know, integrate yourself into the schedule in that way. And I think it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah. In your book, I read about something that you called pod math. And
podcast value math,
yes,
my favorite thing.
Value math. Yes. And so a lot of folks are thinking about monetization and does it make sense? If it doesn't make dollars, doesn't make sense. How do you measure the ROI of a podcast that's not necessarily ad driven or monetized starting out?
Oh, thank you so much for asking this. What a treat to get to talk about podcast value math. So it comes down with first is, what did you decide is the value you need from your podcast? And again, that can be so different from business to business. It could be referral partners who are sending new business to you that way. It could be content that you don't have to create manually or your team members don't have to create. It can be all sorts of different things that you are measuring. You figure that out. You figure what your baseline is, how much of that value in your business is happening now before you've started a podcast. Good, you've got a baseline number. Then you look at your podcast. Okay, what parts of the podcast are going to be adding to that value? Is it the guests? Is it the follow-up? Is it the referrals they send? Is it potential? Is it the sales cycle length? Where in the podcast is value being created? Good. Now you optimize the podcast to make as much of that value as possible, to get people to send you more referrals, if that's the goal. Make it easy for them, make it pleasant, give them resources, follow up with them. So important. And those equations, what creates the value you want, and what you do to make the value, that's the value math. And that's the number that you can modify over time. And it's going to look a little bit different for every business and for every podcast. But the basic premise is the same, is you've got the value you want, the things you do to create the value, and how you alter those value variables to create as much as possible.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And I know some folks are going to pause this section and listen back again because you just said a whole lot in 1 minute. And that is a powerful gem that your business can use to track the ROI on your podcasting efforts for your business. Because the reality is it will take time for you to build the brand, to get the clients. But as you are doing it, you can still track the right metrics to make sure that you are still following your North Star for your podcast goals. So, and Megan, what is your take on niching down? A lot of folks are scared to be too specific, and they just want to be generalists and talk to everybody. But if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody, right? So encourage our audience to niche down and to dig deep, to go 13 miles in one direction instead of 1 mile in 13 directions. Help us, Megan, help us.
Well, I need to first admit to you that I am ultimately a very lazy woman, and I don't like to make decisions if data can tell me what to do. So I think if someone is a little bit worried about niching, and I've been there myself, sometimes I even still stray too far on the, I want to make sure that it's available to everyone kind of side of things. So I definitely get it. But what I like to do is look at the past, look at data. Who are the customers that I've had that have been the most pleasant to work with, that have been the most profitable, that my team has liked the most? Who has been the nicest to my team? I think reverse engineering a niche is often a lot more sensible than choosing one and trying to apply it top down. Because if you've been in business for a couple of years, if you've been podcasting, if you've been offering your products and services for a while, you've got experiences working with people. Your niche is in there probably. And you can find these people were the best. What did they have in common? Oh, okay. They all run small law firms. Interesting. Or, maybe they're all in food and beverage type businesses. Great. And they're newer businesses. The people I've liked working with the best, they've all been in business less than 5 years. Okay, your niche starts to form when you start kind of chipping away at your customer roster, basically, and finding these are the ones that have been the best to work with. They've been the highest profit, the best margins, the lowest stress. And I think, stop stressing about your niche. Just uncover the one you've already got.
Wow.
Would be my advice.
Wow, that's powerful, powerful. Yeah, look at your history and who you've worked with. Think about what you are most passionate about, and just lean in. Surrender to your genius. All right. Yeah.
Oh, I like that too. Surrender to the genius you've already put out into the world, because it's hard to see. When you're the one putting it out, it can be hard to see unless you actually take the time to sit back and really look at where the numbers indicate the genius is.
Yes.
Because we don't always have the clearest view on our own work, right?
Exactly.
So it's nice to have data to help guide us.
Exactly. I love it. All right, Megan. So how can businesses keep their content fresh? Because we get, cumbered down with the business responsibilities, and, it's tax season. A lot of us are just busy. How do we keep our content fresh and not getting stale along the pod journey? Because we podcast for the long game.
Yeah. Give yourself permission to do less is my first really big one. Because no one is going to sound brilliant 52 weeks out of the year. Some people can, we hate them, but they do exist. But most of us mere mortals, that's a really heavy lift. So I think I'm a really big proponent of podcast seasons. Doing every single week without that is a really big lift, and you do get tired and you do get burnt out. So if you 3 months, take a month off, do another 3 months, give yourself some time to creatively recharge, and also give yourself some time to look at, hey, what has performed the best? What are people looking into the most? Okay, good. I can focus more on that, or even do that. Like we were just talking about, who is my real niche? Has that developed? Do I need to make more content specifically for them? So I think building in a little time into your year to sort of creatively recharge and really spend some time on analysis and planning rather than just being constantly on that treadmill of creation is really a good way to do it. And then people are going to be excited when there's a new episode again, right? Yeah. If they've had a little break or a couple of weeks of replays, it's going to be nice to get some fresh content. And I think everyone's going to be a little happier with that. There's so much right now. There's just so much everything. And I think giving yourself permission and giving your audience permission to take a break too. We're all tired.
Yeah. Well said. It's okay to pause, to be transparent with your audience. If they are for you, they will be waiting for you when you get back.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a great reason to say, like, hey, we're going to be cause for specific. Make sure you get onto our email list so that you're notified when we come back. It's a nice little push also to take somebody on that next step of engagement as well.
Yes, yes. Well said. So, Megan, what are some common mistakes? You work with organizations for various sectors. What are
Mhm.
some common mistakes that you see businesses making with their podcast, and how can we avoid them?
Yeah. So a really big one is attempting to monetize through ads and sponsorships. And the biggest reason for that, it sounds like a great reason, right? Oh, we want to make sure we cover our costs with this external ads. And I think this is the biggest mistake that a business can make when they're getting into podcasting is trying to monetize via ads or sponsorship, because the ROI on that, it just sucks compared to selling your own products and services.
Yeah.
It is so much worse. And I like it makes sense to want to try and do right, because you see the podcasting line item expense every week and you don't always have the metrics directly tied to the revenue. It's often indirect how a podcast supports. So I think that's a really, really big mistake. Another one I see a lot is starting. I know I just said take a break and give yourself a chance to do less, but when you start with not enough
Hmm.
investment of either time or the release cadence, if you try to do like once a month a podcast, is going to take you so long to see any benefit, you're just going to give up before you ever get anywhere. I think you really need to, if you're going to podcast, it's a big project, decide to invest.
Yeah.
Really get in there and give it your all for either one season or for 6 months, for a year, and give yourself the time and the breathing room to make sure that you're actually seeing whether or not your work is working. And finally, I think this one is, and feel free to debate me and argue on this, but I think a big one is feeling pressure to use video.
Ooh.
And I think a lot of people end up making video that they don't feel great about, and so they delay the sharing
Yeah.
because they don't like how the lighting looked or how their makeup looked or how they're presenting. And I think just video's great. It works for a lot of businesses, but you don't have to do it to have a valuable podcast. So I think
Yeah.
trying to force yourself into a mold because everyone else is doing it is always going to fail.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that, because a lot of folks feel the pressure. I want to start a podcast, but
Yeah.
I'm not ready for video. I don't have the gear. You don't have to have a video
Yeah.
component for your podcast. You can buy a quality Samsung Q2U for $70, sound
Mm-hmm.
amazing, and talk into your microphone and put out your
Yep.
episodes and build a following and dedicated audience. You don't need to do video. However, the reality
Yep.
is, if you're doing video, your cell phone is a great video camera that you can
It
use. All
is.
right. So you don't have to go buy the $1,000 Sony DSLR camera with the fancy 30mm lens. You don't need to do that. The best camera you have, the best camera to use is the one you already have. All right. So don't let the
Well,
gear get in the way of your podcasting journey, because a lot of folks have gear acquisition syndrome, where they see your
oh,
gear and they see
gearheads
something
are
new
such a thing.
and they're like, I gotta have it. But I try to help
Mm-hmm.
my clients and my community to shift from gear acquisition syndrome to gear acquisition strategy, right? If you're gonna buy
Ooh, I
something,
love that.
what's the strategy behind it? Like, if our company is gonna
Mm-hmm.
buy 5 DSLR cameras and spend $5,000, what's the strategy for it? Okay, we're not just
Mm-hmm.
buying it to buy it. We're not just acquiring it to acquire it. We're gonna acquire things strategically. And so, thank you for sharing that we don't have to do video for our business
Mm-hmm.
podcast. You just freed somebody, Megan. You don't even know it. You helped them.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I will say to everyone who is watching this now and in the future, have a better webcam than the one I'm currently using. My webcam died on the weekend, and so I'm on computer webcam, which is not generally how I like to present myself. So I apologize to you for having only webcam video, but I think you're exactly right. Use what you've got, and if the difference between having a podcast and not having a podcast is using Zoom versus another recorder. If Zoom is going to get you podcasting, use it. If it's your phone that's going to get you podcasting, use it. If it's if it's your webcam, and I will draw the line at your laptop mic, don't use that to podcast. But otherwise, you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah. And Megan, thank you for just showing up and being yourself, because I tell people all the time, video quality can be forgiven, but as long as we hear you clearly, we can absorb
Yeah,
the content. And so I
it's a
lean
great
more
point.
towards audio than anything else.
Video quality, like video mistakes in video quality and video, you're exactly right, are so much easier for someone to overlook than bad audio
Yeah.
and bad post production as well. I'm looking at you, Descript editors.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Megan, you're a big advocate for repurposing content and helping businesses to work strategically with the content they already have from their podcast.
Absolutely.
What are your favorite strategies for squeezing out the most value out of every podcast episode?
Oh, you're going to hate this. It's rigorous planning in advance.
Let's go.
Yeah. So I think if you really want to repurpose, especially for bigger content projects, and that's where a lot of the repurposing comes in. Like, it's great to have a flywheel of social media content and all those things. Those are lovely. But like, the real money, I think, is when you're podcasting over the course of the year, and by the end of it, oh, you've got a first draft of your book. Or, oh, amazing, you've got the entire bones of the next course that you're going to sell. Or you've got an entirely new training system for new clients as you onboard them. And that work can be done essentially effortlessly, because you're already podcasting and you're going to be doing this. You're creating this content. You've got these other goals for it as well. But if you plan in advance what topics you need to cover, the beats that are going to be important, the different ideas you need to address over the course of the year to fulfill a much bigger content project. And it can be pillar content, it can be book and magazine articles, whatever fills your heart or whatever is a goal for you. If you just do it and track your progress along and decide, okay, in March, I'm going to be talking about all of my customer acquisition stuff. And it's going to be a great experience for the listeners. And it's going to be the first draft of that chapter in the book that I'm working.
Yeah.
And, it can be a pain to do that level of planning at the beginning. And it can feel like you're just working to spec. But you know what? We've got businesses to run. Working to spec's a lot easier than coming up with something every week. So I think that's my favorite way, is to really get a great plan for what you're going to be creating. And then that is specifically for the repurposing angle. If you don't want or need a book or a course or a long-term project thing, don't stress about it. Focus on capturing that good multimedia so that you've got, video and different things, assets you can share that'll save time and money later on. But I think the big savings or the big repurposing value is in the planning in advance.
That is powerful, powerful. Some of us were expecting you to say, yeah, make sure you use Opus Clip to repurpose your video and crank it out to different platforms. Make sure you use Get Munch or AI tools. But you said planning is the most important part for repurposing your content. Because reality is, a lot of us have a lot of content that we're sitting on, and our vault is just overloaded with material that could be repurposed into something positive. But because we're so busy and we didn't think about it beforehand, it's just going to be collecting dust on the back end.
Oh, yeah. There's such a big difference in having an archive of content. And there's a book in there. But if it's not organized, if it's not indexed, if the transcripts aren't done, that's such a mountain to climb. But if you've got a spreadsheet that has, it's got your episodes, it's got your audio, it's got a link to the transcript, they're already basically in order.
Yeah.
Well, you can just hand that to someone, a good developmental editor, and say, hey, can you take this and turn it into a first draft for me? Boom, you're done. You didn't have to do anything extra after you put that initial rigor around your planning and your production.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Podcasters, we need to start working smarter. All right. Because
work smarter.
Yeah. When we do the work and are strategically intentional upfront, it will save us time and energy on the back end. Wow.
Always.
So what role should a podcast play in a business's marketing ecosystem? That's
a really excellently worded question, because I think the role can vary a little, but ultimately a podcast is supportive to the business. And within a marketing system, it can be the main linchpin around which everything else revolves, or it can support whatever kind of the other key content element is. So if someone is by nature a writer more than they are a podcaster, their podcast can support their written work and be, follow what they are doing on their blog or in their email newsletter, and kind of supplement it that way. For other businesses, I'd say for the majority of business owners, the podcast can become the linchpin of the marketing, because it's the hub around which other content circulates: the social media, the blog, the email, all of those other things. And I think that's going to come down to, again, the number of people involved. Sometimes you've got a business owner who is the host of the podcast. Sometimes they've got a marketing manager who's the host, or they've got a marketing manager who's making the decision and making the host sit down and record once a week. So it really depends on, what the team looks like, what the goals are. But I think as long as you remember that the job of the podcast is not to be a podcast, the job of the podcast is to do something for the business.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to get the value out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you alluded to the fact that some organizations may have internal personnel doing it for them. Some organizations may outsource. Yeah. What advice would you give to the business who is outsourcing the podcasting piece to an organization like your company or
Mhm.
another company like mine, what advice would you give to them to hold that company accountable, to not just let them do everything, but to still take ownership of your podcast, even if someone else is
Mhm.
still managing it?
Definitely. So I think there's the role of the talent, and there's the role of the strategy, and then there's the role of the production and post production. And ideally, they're all working together really, really beautifully. I'm sure you have never had the experience of having difficulty wrangling talent, right? It's but it can be difficult. I have a saying that I tell my clients, I tell our team, is that our clients is the boss of the podcast. You are the boss of your podcast, and
Right.
ultimately, all decisions you have to make. It's your business. It's your marketing tool. And I think it can be really easy to get on that treadmill, as we were talking about before, and kind of forget, why am I doing this? All I'm thinking about is the fact that I've got another release coming up next Tuesday and I've got to get ready for it. And so making sure that you're working with an outsourced team who's able to sit down with you once a month or once a quarter to be like, hey, how are we doing on actually tracking our goals? Are we actually, is this podcast actually pulling its weight in the business?
Yeah.
Because, we're not doing this just for the love of the game, right? It's got to be delivering value. That value can look really different, but it's got to be there. And so to keep control, I think that means you have to know what are the metrics that tell us whether or not it's working or not, and are we achieving those metrics? And I think if that's an open conversation between, say, company and talent and outsourced team and production, that's a really, really good thing. Because as you know, there are lots of different kinds of help you can get. You can get, executors who are going to take what you give them and push out the same product every week, and that can be perfect.
Yeah.
There are people who are more developmental in more coaching in how they arrange things. So it's a matter of what do you want the podcast to do? What resources do you have internally to make that happen? And where are the gaps that you need to fill with an outsourced team?
Yeah. Well said. Now, I want to take you to the other side, because I'm thinking about that
Okay.
company who says, well, we already have a communications team and they don't
Mm-hmm.
know jack about podcasting. Yes, they are communication professionals, but they are
Mm-hmm.
not hip to the podcasting game. They don't know what the heck they're doing. And you're entrusting the communications department to launch a podcast instead of going to experts who can actually help you achieve your
Mm-hmm.
goals. And so you think, yes, I'm going to load my communications team with all this extra work and we're going to make a whole extra money, but they don't know what they're doing. So how important
Yeah.
it is to seek the right help and not just any help.
I think it's really important to do that incredibly difficult human thing as being really self-aware, and not just on the personal individual level, but on the company and infrastructure level. So if you've got a great communications team, they know the business really well, and they know the customer journey, and they know the customer avatars, and those are all critical to success in podcasting. So I hope the conversation that would be happening on that team is, okay, let's get a consultant to help us plan the podcast. Maybe we've got everything we need internally to execute, but we don't know what we don't know. So I'm going to buy 5 hours of a podcast consultant's time
Right.
to figure out what it is that we don't know. And, maybe then you can totally easily produce in-house, or just get an editor who can just slap everything together once it's been planned and once it's been created.
Right.
So I think, letting the communications team do what they're great at, figure out the brand, figure out where it fits with the marketing, figure out what needs to be repurposed. But I think it's really important to get at least a sense of what you don't know.
Right.
So I'd recommend everyone, book a strategy call with somebody, join a podcasting newsletter or two. You could get the book. But that's always.
It's really good, y'all. Really good.
Thank you. But there are lots of podcasting experts, lots of people doing things in great ways. Find someone who you like to help you fill the gaps in your own knowledge, and then make your decisions from there.
Yeah, well said, well said. Now, Megan, what is one myth about podcasting that you wish you could demyth or bust forever? One myth.
That downloads tell you anything important at all.
Break it down, Megan, break it down.
Yeah. So what a download tells you, and whatever download, listen, follow, however the different platforms describe it, that tells you basically how many times your podcast episode has been downloaded by a computer or a person over the course of the life of that episode. And what does that mean is the question I always want to follow it up with, because, me, I've got a podcast. If I get $10,000 tomorrow, that and a toonie will get me a Perrier. because it doesn't have a real connection to anything else in my business. I measure the value of my podcast very differently. The downloads, sure, it's nice. It's important to keep an eye on them. You want to know, like, hey, this episode was really popular. What happened? Or this is my baseline. I can now see, what's different when I do different topics or have different formats, things like that. But ultimately, for podcasters, for business podcasters, downloads only matter in relationship to something else. If I know that for every 10,000 downloads, I'm going to get 5 new clients. Okay, great. That's a really important goal. So I know that many new people listen. I'm going to get that many new clients. I can do the math on what a new client is worth to me and my company. Then downloads are a valuable number. But by themselves, they don't mean anything. It's just, they're grains of sand on the beach. If you're not tracking what a download means in terms of a human action that a human is taking in regards to your business, it's just a vanity metric. And it can be a nice one. It's great to know, you're top 5, top 10%. But if that's not translating into something you can see on your balance sheet as a business owner, all you've done is spend a lot of money to feel good.
Wow.
And that's not the way to go forward.
Yeah. So for those who do not have your book, can you please, in a minute or two, appeal to their hearts as to why they should acquire the book, Podcasting for Business, How to Create a Show that Makes a Bottom Line Difference for Your Company?
So when I set out to write this book, I did not want to write a business book. I wanted to write a textbook. I wanted to write a textbook about how a business can use a podcast as a marketing tool within their business. So what it does is it outlines our methodology for designing podcasts as tools that work within businesses. It's called the Business Podcast Blueprints. That means you choose the most important thing that your podcast does. You've got 5 options. And then it talks about how to optimize different elements of your podcast to create as much value as possible. And it goes into fairly excruciating detail about how to do all of these things.
Yes, it goes deep.
So it really is. It's a manual on how to create a profitable podcast for your business. And there is math associated with all of that. I'm not blowing smoke. It is how to create a podcast that makes measurable value in your business, with the odd joke. Because life's too short to read boring textbooks. But I think if you are someone who likes a process, if you like rigor, if you're into spreadsheets, this is going to be the book that helps you get a podcast that's working for your business.
Amazing. And they can find it on your website or on Amazon, correct?
Exactly. Currently on Amazon. That is going to be changing, but you'll always be able to find it at podcastingforbusiness.com.
All right.
/book, or just
yes.
Podcastingforbusiness.com.
Yes.
Best domain I ever got.
Yes. Please make sure you get your copy at podcastingforbusiness.com. What is one thing that you're working on that you're excited about for your future that you would like to share with our audience?
Professionally or otherwise?
Anything you want to share.
Okay, I'm super excited about something we're doing at One Stone Creative right now, and we are developing a new way for busy business owners to podcast called a business podcast sprint. And so this is for a season, either solo or with a co-host, where all you have to do is tell us about your business and your goals. And my team will actually write the scripts for you. We'll record them with you in a virtual setting. We will do the post-production. We will publish it all. So it's the easiest way for a busy expert business owner to podcast. And that's brand new. We have just released it this year.
Amazing. And name that initiative again, one more time.
It is called a Business Podcast Sprint. And it is completely built on the Podcasting for Business book framework. So they are profitable podcasts. Amazing.
So you all please check out what One Stone Creative is doing and what they're building, because they are truly making a difference in the lives of the businesses and the bottom lines of the businesses through podcasting. Megan, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story on the Leverage Your Influence podcast. I want to give you an opportunity to share one final word of appeal to that business owner, operator, entrepreneur, creative who has a number of talents and gifts. They want to change the world, but they are afraid to start their podcast. How would you encourage them to use podcasting to pod hack their way to their next level?
The very first thing you should do is be a guest on other people's shows. Before you invest in your own podcast, go out there, see if you like the medium, see if you like how other people are doing it, see what other people are doing. If that works for you, and you can use that content they produce for your own marketing as well, right? See if you like it. If you do like it, excellent. Start a podcast. Give yourself permission to start with a season. You don't need to start with a weekly show that's going to go on forever. You can start with 10 episodes that cover one topic really thoroughly. And then at the end of that, If you liked it, amazing, do more. And if you didn't, you can stop. You didn't fade. You didn't give up. You finished a project. Congratulations.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Megan, for joining us on Leverage Your Influence podcast. Thank you again, audience, for listening or watching. We look forward to growing with you on our next episode. Take care.